Recording from the dark. Last year, I remember telling this South African billionaire, uh, is it Rupert, that God is gonna switch off the light. It was before the ESCOM problem. I didn't know what God meant when he said, "Tell Mr. Rupert, Mr. Johan Rupert, we made a video here last year, like 12 months ago, and God said He's gonna switch off the lights." I just said those words. I didn't know that he also meant actually not just the lights in the head, which is strategic understanding, but also physical lights. ESCOM has happened, and part of this thing is actually an attack on white monopoly capital, and by extension, the rest of white South Africa. Now, let me explain something. When I started this channel, my prophecies were focused on South African politics. And one of the group of people that I prophesied to was white South Africans, giving them a warning from the Lord about what some kind of misfortune or punishment is going to come upon them if they do not do what God asked them to do. And I remember saying that this burden has been on me not from last year. I mean, even in the past 15 years. I remember working in Joburg. Oh, the electricity is back. And 10, 15 years back, God will give me a burden concerning white South Africans. But I did not understand what it was. The Lord would force me to fast. If I don't fast, he will be angry. And I'm like, why must I fast for white people? I'm not white. I would fast, and then God will be looking, He would look at those white houses and say, "You see these people, keep on fasting for them." And then I'll just carry on. But anyway, cut long story short, I forgot about it. It was a long time ago. Last year, the Holy Spirit came back again with the same message, again as white South Africans. Now, God is putting more flesh into this thing. I'm beginning to understand it more. Now, I will tell you what it is. Yes, back in 2007 or 2008 or so, I can't remember the year. The Lord gave me a dream. It was a very vivid dream, and He spoke. I knew it was God speaking to me, but I was asleep. In this dream, I see Cape Town. Cape Town, a very beautiful city with high skyscrapers. Think of the waterfront area of Cape Town, from the city center to the waterfront. That beautiful place. But in that dream, it had even higher skyscrapers. It was luxurious. And then next to it was what you call it? It's like a border. Okay, across that border was a huge squatter camp with poverty and disease and black people living there. Okay. And then the high skyscrapers was obviously the white South Africans who lived there. And then God said to me, "What do you think I should do with these people?" In that dream, I don't remember replying, but I remember the Lord asking me what I think He should do about this discrepancy. That there's a lot of people in a sea of poverty, and just across that border is a life of opulence. And another thing, during the same time, He gave me also another vision of a tent. This time around, it was a tent, it was like a big tent. And then next to that big tent was a small shack of a house that was almost like falling. And God showed me a man. He said that this man works in this big tent. Look at where he lives. And he asked me the same question. What what do you want me what do you think I will do to the owner of this tent or to this tent? Before I even replied, I said I do not know. And then he replied, he said, "You know what? I will bring it down." For years, it wasn't really clear what God meant. Though I knew instantly then he meant white monopoly capital. But I didn't know what is it that they're doing wrong. Because when you are the oppressed one, especially the black people, the oppression is so endemic and so deep that Black people don't even know that they are oppressed. They don't even know who's oppressing them, how they are oppressed, the nature of the oppression, and therefore do not know how to get out of the oppression. So last year, we prophesied to Johann Rupert and this way, God is going to switch off the lights. And there the lights are switching off, this ESCOM load shedding. Now, here is God shedding light on the ESCOM load shedding, according to my understanding. That's actually part of an attack. As I've been telling you, that there is an attack coming to South Africa and Africa, which is Russian and Chinese origin, and it's already happening. All right, but I remember making a video about it last year. I think I made only one video about war coming to South Africa, and I was saying it's a Russian war. Even me then, I didn't understand how can the Russians attack South Africa, like from where. But the nature of wars is not always guns, shooting guns. It can be an economic war, it can be a currency war, it can be a trade war, it can be any political war, without you noticing it. So here's the thing. Because of the great income inequality in South Africa that was perpetuated by the current white monopolists, says the Lord, that my spirit is against you. Therefore, white people, know very well that this young man is not the one who is going to do what he's telling you, but he's telling you what the Spirit of the Lord is revealing, to tell you, to bring you into light and recognition of your sin, that the sin that you have committed against the local population of this country. You have done what you have done, thinking that this population does not have a healer or a leader. And it indeed says the Spirit of the Living God, this black population of South Africa does not have a leader or a healer, because the leaders that they think in their mind are leading blacks are actually that are blacks that you white people you've put in place, they in power there to pretend to be leading black people, yet in actual fact they're not leading black people to the best interest of blacks, but they're leading black people to the detriment of blacks. Take a look at Cyril Ramaphosa, your man, the one that you gave millions and made him a billionaire, so that he will be able to withstand the currents of of or the barrage of attack from the suffering black masses. He's still sort of like a shield between the white monopoly capitalists and the barrage of the black suffering. They will come to attack Cyril, not the whites. And Cyril will do, I don't know whatever it is that he has to do there, just to keep black people poor, or to make the people imagine as if something positive is going to happen, or perhaps the growth will be there, but it will be too slow, such that it will not really be meaningful at the end of the day, or it is being managed through a lot of throwing, kicking the can down the road, but with this promise of a better South Africa for blacks, but knowing very well that it will never come. After Cyril, you will bring another guy who also do the same thing again. But then again, if you look at Cyril, now, God said, I must tell you, white people, that your enemy is actually Russia and China. The very same Cyril that you gave money to and other guys in the ANC that you made rich so that they can protect you against the black people. God says you actually succeeded in doing that. But what you did not recognize, that these people, these black people, not all of them are slaves to sin. Some of them actually are worshippers of God. When God was about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, he asked Abraham, okay, Abraham is one who asked God, that if you find 50 righteous men, will you destroy the city? God said no. Meaning that God can allow you to destroy Black South Africa as long as there is no Black South Africans who worship the Lord. However, in South Africa, God has found that in as much as most Black South Africans do not love Jesus, I know, I've stayed with them, they worship their ancestors and they practice a whole lot of witchcraft, which actually has been the reason why God has been allowing them to be attacked by whites, so that they live in their own country, but in a river of poverty. That is actually God's judgment on black South Africa. But however, says the Spirit of the Living God, because there's a lot of black South Africans who worship the Lord for the sake of the worshippers, the Lord God Almighty shall arise and become their leader and their healer. And as their leader, you hear me very well, as their leader, as Jesus Christ becomes their leader and their healer, he understands geopolitics more than any white person. No matter how powerful, how rich, how much of a billionaire you are, Jesus will screw your mind. You will not know what way is left and way is right. Even though you have invested in destroying the education outcomes of these black people, so that when they are older, and then you don't want to give them jobs, but you want to give jobs to white people, you will begin to talk about what is it called? What word do they use? What is it? It's a merit-based system, meritocracy. That's what white people like to say. And then when they don't want to give jobs to black people, but it is because you already destroyed their education system anyway, so that the outcome will be less educated blacks. And whilst with the white education system is a well-oiled machine, which will obviously produce better white graduates, and therefore you will say, and then you would give an argument that we want to employ people according to merit, but we are not understanding that from the time they were growing up, the level playing field was not the same, especially with black people growing up in that location, in an environment where it's drug, money, uh, drug infested, alcohol infested, and then with a culture that has already been engineered to to, to, to be prone to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, that kind of upbringing, and creating an environment where conducive economic growth cannot happen within that black market. I mean, that black environment. I mean, something that you actually engineered through appetite. Okay, God understands that, God knows that, and you succeeded in it, and therefore this black community cannot prosper. Just look at the taxi violence. It's difficult for the taxi industry to actually be a proper industry, okay, to run a proper black low township economy, because of their upbringing, the gun violence. It's difficult for people to respect the rule of law, because of that social engineering that appetite brought to these townships, to these black townships. And you can pretty much see that it's engineered, because if I take a look at South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana, these are actually the same people. They are Nguni people, most of them. People who speak Tswana, there's Tswanas in South Africa, Tswanas in Botswana, and Tswanas in Zimbabwe. Zulu is spoken in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in Botswana. So the cultures are the same. But you discover that in Botswana townships, there's no drug abuse, there's no much alcohol abuse. Even in Zimbabwe township, there's no drug abuse, almost non-existent. Alcohol abuse is minimal. But if you come to South Africa, as township, extreme drug abuse, extreme violence, extreme alcoholism, total difference. We speak the same language, we practice the same culture, which begins to show that the South African population under the apartheid system was socially engineered to be like that. While in Zimbabwe, in Zimbabwe and Zambia as well, in Malawi, which was also colonized by former British white people, the Rhodesians did not socially engineer the black people or the black townships to be that terrible. Okay. So it was the South African whites who did it. That's why God is specific when talking about white people. He's not talking about white people all over the world. No, he makes it clear to me that it's white South Africans, not white Europeans, not white Americans, not white Zambians, not white Zimbabweans, but actually white South Africans specifically. So you can see, I mean, like the outcomes of black people, the outcomes of black people education wise, outcomes in culture. You see that in the region, black people are fairly okay, but in South Africa, there was an attack on that, and God is aware of it. And because of that attack, it cripples the black society of South Africa to actually win. It's difficult to win when your most of your society is heavily is under this heavy burden of drug abuse and alcohol abuse, low education outcomes, vis-a-vis a white population that have got high education outcomes. They are coming from environments that are conducive for people to have high moral standards. You understand? In the location, the moral standards are low owing to the attack of their social fabric by the apartheid regime. And even up to today, there's a continuation of that through various other nefarious means that the Lord has noticed that the white South Africans are doing to the black population, because they feel like they have to control these black people. They have to contain by their, they feel like they have to contain these black people in a sea of poverty, in a perennial poverty, in their own country, in their own nation. So that angers the Lord that they worship every day, when they say there's no one like you. You are great, you are awesome. Then he looks down and says, these people say I'm great, but I can see that they have got enemies that have made them poor and destroyed their communities. I'm gonna come down and help them. To understand? So you see, the mistake that you did there is miscalculating that these people actually have got a Lord, because you crushed the Chris Hannis and all these other black consciousness leaders, and thinking that if you bring about the Ramaphosas of this world, these so-called pro-white black leaders, you are safe. Well, God says you are not safe from the Lord. You are safe from attack from Black South Africa. Yes, you are right, says the Lord, because if you have totally destroyed them. You are more powerful than them. They cannot overpower you. Yet God, their Lord, who is Jesus Christ, is pleading with you to stop what you are doing. Because if you do not stop what you're doing, the attack of the Lord has already started. And I told you that is coming through the Russia and the Chinese angle. And because if here's the thing, if you are more powerful than other people and you oppress those that are lower than you, because you believe that they can't do anything to you, this is how God attacks you. He brings somebody who's bigger than you. Yes, the blacks we have subdued and destroyed, but the Russians and the Chinese, you did not destroy their education system. You do not destroy their societies, because you cannot. You've got no access to them. So you can only destroy these South Africans. So when God empowers them, they come to attack you. If you think this is not biblical, go read the Bible. When God was angry with Israel, he said, I'm going to raise Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, just solely for the purpose of humbling Israel. So do not think that God cannot rise an army against you. An evil army, an evil man can be raised by God solely for the purpose of humbling you. So in the same breath, China and Russia are raised by God also to humble you, white South Africans. But however, there is still space for maneuver. That space actually is a place of repentance. When you repent and begin right now in South Africa to push for policies, instead of fighting the ANC every time it comes up with these BEE policies, you will discover in South Africa, whether it's the DA or from the white South Africa, they always are against BEE or any policy that is aimed at improving black people's lives. They will always come up with counter arguments so that the white people will stay on top and black people will stay poor. So, so, so this is what the wisdom of the Lord says. You must actually be the ones who are at the forefront of improving black people's lives. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. If you don't understand, if you don't believe prophecy, let's talk about the physical things. Now, you see the reason why China is overtaking the world is because one good thing that the Chinese did under their ex-president, what was his name? From I can't remember his name. Sure, okay, whatever his name is, from 1976 to the 80s, when they actually brought up China from poverty. The Chinese people, when they were brought out of poverty, got into the middle class, upper middle class, became millionaires, started businesses. they now become a global force. Okay, they are now a force. They are strong. The strength of any nation is its people. Okay, so the Chinese people are powerful now because their government allowed them to succeed. Yet in South Africa, even though the apartheid government since the 1922, much, for white only, the story. Uh, the white government in the past 100 years has actually built South Africa, right? Perfectly, economy awesome. But because it was very exclusively for whites, it was just excluding the rest of the population. So the success in South Africa, or the number of successful people in South Africa, is only limited mostly to white people. And it's a narrow range. The rest of the country is in poverty. So, as a nation, the country cannot defend itself. That's what God showed me, that you see, as a nation, this country cannot defend itself against the Chinese because most of its people, the blacks, are in poverty. Versus China, most of its people, the Chinese, are not in poverty. They are powerful. When we say China is attacking you, it doesn't have to take Xi Jinping to attack you. Just a few Chinese, just one of the Chinese, because there are many of them. They're able to divide each other and attack all the countries around the world because they are all successful. In South Africa, you can't do that because it's only one group of people that are successful. It's just white people. And they have been bringing in maybe the Indians there or some coloreds, some so-called white coloreds because of the color of their skin, and some Muslims also because of the color of their skin. But the blacks have been left like there. So because of that, I mean, not even talking about the spirit, physically speaking, because of that, your country is going to be destroyed. When the Chinese and the Russians come to South Africa, they will come and rip the white monopoly off the map. So the Lord was showing me that these white people think that their enemy is blacks, therefore let us subdue the blacks. You know what they did to Julius Malema last year? They took him to court and they made him to speak categorically that he will never sing that song. I want to kill a Bura or something, and they had to make him say, I want to kiss a Bura, stuff like that, thinking that by subduing Julius Malema or containing Julius Malema, then their troubles are over. They also went forward on as well and sponsored things like Operation Dudula, that was meant to shift the blame from white people who are the real reasons why South Africans are suffering, to shift the blame from white people to other black people, to black foreigners, my constituents, to say we are the ones who are causing black South Africans to be poor. Oh, come on. It is white people, obviously, but that is what they did. They sponsored Operation Tutuela. And I suffer, my constituents suffer, and I worship God. You see, here's the thing. When you sponsor Operation Tutuela, things like that, and lying, shifting the blame from people that are weak, like the Zimbabweans and the rest of the Africans, you believe that you will win because indeed you are powerless politically and emotion and financially and stuff like that. Yet you don't understand that we worship God. I worship God. So when I worship God, God begins to tell me who my enemy is, who is causing trouble to me. But you don't figure either. In fact, you don't value Jesus as something powerful. But anyway, he's going to humble you. Here's the thing. Do not play around people who have got Christ, because they will crush you by their worship. As they worship the Lord, you might see them as uneducated, unassuming, and basically making empty threats because they're just waiters in the market bins that you own and run in your own economy. Even Pharaoh thought of that, of the Israelites. Even Pharaoh thought of that. But the God of heaven rescued the Israelites from Pharaoh. So, white South Africans, be very careful in your assessment of the situation, because right now, just like I told Emerson Mnangagwa that he is fighting a God, even you are now fighting a God. And it's going to be very difficult for you to get out of the clashes of the hand of the Lord. And it's good that the Lord is sending us to tell you and clarify to you your sin, so that when you see your sin, and you'll be able to be free. And when you repent, God can actually take away the Russians and the Russian and Chinese threat from you, and you can actually win. That's the reason why I actually come here, because even to us as black Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe are actually facing the uh, same enemy, which is Russia and China and Idim Nangawa. And white South Africans, you are also suffering, you are also going to face the Russia and China. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, in as much as you have been jealousy against us, fighting us, we find ourselves at a place where we've got no choice but to team up together, actually, to fight the bigger threat to our region, which is the Russia and China blitz into Southern Africa. If you look at ESCOM, the load shedding, which some say is sabotage. Sabotage to who? Sabotage, obviously, to the white industries, to the white run economy of South Africa. I mean, before that, you had the July unrest that was targeting the white economy. As you can see, there's actually physical attacks already that have actually happened. And the idea is for white people to be frustrated about South Africa and complain about the ANC and go to New Zealand and whatever. Don't think that the ANC can attack the white economy so that the ANC can take over. The ANC, most black people like the ANC and ZANU PF, by the way, they do not have the capacity to run economies. To understand, they never invested in a capacity to run economy. They are only invested in capacity to extract whatever is already there. You see, ZANU PF only took over power and chased away white people in the year 2000. All they've done from year 2000 until now is extract wealth that is there. Whether it was, if it was the farms, they extracted the wealth in previously white owned farms until it ran down to zero. They extracted the buildings that were in town, they don't even maintain them, dilapidated, goes to zero. Now they are extracting wealth in the mining sector. They're just taking gold. They don't build anything. They don't invest in systems. They don't have the capacity to build an economy. No, do they have the appetite to do that? They're thieves, basically. ANCs and OPF is in the same boat. Now, here's the mistake also that the white people did in 1994. We gave the country to their hands that were going to sell their own to sell their own people. Understand? Because how can you make a deal with someone who doesn't like his own people, who can steal from his own people, and you don't think that they will steal from you? God showed me that, you know what, these white people, when they got rid of good black people that were going to lead the country well in favor of black people that are willing to be sell out, black people that you made billionaires so that they can do your bidding to preserve white monopoly capital. And look at now what they have done. They have turned against you now. They are having drills with the Chinese and the Russians in the country that you built in order to show you their strength and eventually evict you. But you are the ones who gave them money. That's the Tsotsis. You can't do business with a Tsotsi and think that the Tsotsi cannot later turn around and Tsotsi you as well. You will be Tsotsi as well, obviously. You understand? So God showed me that, you see, these appetite guys, they thought they were wise when they were promoting a corrupt ANC, hoping that a corrupt ANC will be helpful in their agenda of keeping the black people poor and marginalized. Because the corrupt ANC will not build capacity for blacks, and they didn't build capacity for blacks. And you thought that, oh wow, this is a good thing. We found our guys, but it later turned out that Tsotis will always be Tsotis. If they their own people, if they stole from their own people, or they're mistrustworthy to their own people, they will also be untrustworthy to you too. They will go and sleep with the Russians and the Chinese to attack you, the white people. Even though you white people were in bed with them, to preserve the economy for yourselves away from the rest of the blacks. You thought that they are Tsotsis, but they are good. They are on our side. No, a Tsotsi will always be a Tsotsi. It helps Gelege. And you also sponsored quite a music that taught black people that being a conman is a good thing. Just go around South Africa, black communities. If you're a conman or you are a gangster, you're celebrated. That's what the music says. That's what Mendoza sings about. Why is Mendoza celebrated? Because it just sings rubbish. All of them, all the Kwaito artists, they just sing absolutely nonsense. Well, they sing about we must go and drink beer all night long, get new girls every day. All the songs, all those house songs that it's very, if you're a white person, you do not know what the house songs say, their lyrics. It's only one thing. They always speak about let's go and drink beer all night long. Let's get new girls. I've got a lot of money. I'm buying expensive alcohol. I've got new girlfriends every day. I'm Nkalakata Mendoza, the one song that what is Nkalakata? It means the biggest salty in the hood. Okay, it means I'm the biggest criminal. That's what Nkalakata. Nkalakata. It means I'm the criminal. I'm the criminal. I'm the biggest criminal in the hood. What can you do to me? Oh, I can shoot you. I can kill you. Blah blah blah. We celebrate that. Black people in South Africa celebrate that. It's not just music, it's real. It's like the real gangsters are celebrated. Okay. You can even it extends also to even colored communities. So those communities are completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. And it was a policy, it was an appetite policy to promote that, deliberate move to promote that, so that the society is destroyed mentally. And it has worked. It has worked. So you do not think that if you sponsor black people who are willing to do those things, to become tsotis, you do not think that the fact that they are criminals, they will use that criminality against you. The next thing will have political leaders with millions of rands under mattresses and sofas, and they're wondering what's happening. Selling the country, but now who's selling who? You might think it's black people being sold, but you'll be surprised to discover that it's actually you are the ones who are being sold. By the very one, by the very snake that you fed and until it became big. Now that your snake has become big, it's coming to bite you. Holy is the Lord. Don't play. I told you, don't mess with people that worship Jesus. Don't mess with people that worship Jesus. Don't mess with black people that worship Jesus, and then you begin to think that you are clever. You sponsor the criminals amongst the blacks. God will raise that criminal, and that criminal will attack you one day and will bring in foreigners to invade a nation. And I told you that the invasion of a nation is not about guns and shooting people. Okay, invasion of a nation is an economic attack. Economic interests can change. The ownership of the gold mines and the diamonds in this country can change and belong to the Chinese and the Russians. And the white monopoly companies will find themselves going to Australia, New Zealand, wherever they are going to. But unfortunately, it's not going to be a good scenario for Black South Africa, because the deal is not meant to bless Black South Africa, but it's meant to bless and increase the hegemony of China's Russia, or that they are waging against against the USA. Therefore, we are left with no choice but to work than to forgive you, white South Africans, and be able to be joined together in a war against Russia and China, their dominance that they are bringing, that the dominance that they seek around the world, including here in our region. So when we join forces and we kick the Chinese and the Russians back to where you come from, you now have to come to think properly and know that when you are sponsoring political activities, you do not sponsor things like Operation Dudula or any politician that is meant to keep the narrow few white people rich and the rest of the black people suffering. You now need to use that money that we have to sponsor politicians that will bring about a broad based economic success for everyone, for every citizen of the region. As Southern Africa, we can become a powerhouse if we fight off poverty in South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Zambia, Malawi, the DRC, Tanzania, all the way to Angola and Namibia, and we turn around this region. Uplift, take people out of poverty to the middle and upper middle class. We really become the new China of the Southern African region, and we're able to pull that uh, in Chinese investments, that is actually the manufacturing hub of the world. We can bring the manufacturing hub of the world in Southern Africa because we do have the minerals from South Africa to Zimbabwe, Zambia to DRC. We have got all the critical minerals that are needed for rapid industrialization. However, our problem is political. God gifted us with the white people who have got ingenuity and ability to build. But however, one thing it didn't give white people a heart for blacks. The day the white South Africans began to have a heart for black people, just a heart, just a change of heart, not to be racist and love black people and see yourselves as Africans and not as white people. Don't see yourself. One thing I always tell white people: don't see yourself as Europeans. You are not Europeans. Come, you know what? If you go to UK right now, you're not gonna be treated better because you're a white person. The UK is facing its own problems. Look at Ukraine. It's white people that are being butchered by Russia. Do you see the rest of the white people are coming to help them? Yeah, of course they stand in solidarity, but they are being destroyed. So do not think that as white South Africa, when you have got this attack in white South Africa, the white people are gonna come and defend you. They will lament from wherever they are, but they will not defend you. And it will be you to blame because we have failed to build bridges with the local community. We have failed to build bridges with these black natives that you found. Instead, you decided to dominate them instead of partnering with them. Now I'm telling you that this policy of white dominance over black people is coming to bite you back because right now you're gonna face a China that is strong, which has got this whole population strong and able to economically fight you in your own turf in South Africa, and you cannot defend yourself because your soldiers who are supposed to be empowered blacks are drinking alcohol every weekend in Khayelitsha and Gugulethu because you thought that it is best to keep them uneducated and living in dire conditions. Therefore, when the Chinese and the Russians come, they will not even be able to see it. Right now, the propaganda that is online in Africa, a lot of black Africans believe that China and Russia is our friends and white people in the West are our enemies. Therefore, we need to be on the side of Russia and China because they don't understand because why they don't have time to study and get to know things. They are drinking and getting new girls and listening to stupid music that you're sponsoring. Do you understand? So at the end of the day, right now, it's not too late to change course and begin to revisit your ideology and your approach as white people, your ideology and approach to Southern Africa. Do we come to Southern Africa and to subdue these black Zimbabweans, destroy South Africa, destroy Zimbabwe and Zambia and Mozambique and Malawi so that their poor black people can come to South Africa and become cheap labor and be our slaves so that we can have one or two house girls and garden boys? Or do we actually invest in the social mobility of these people and begin to grow a robust economy that can challenge the global? That can change the real global outlook, geopolitical. And it is, and I like the fact that the white people in South Africa, they're already well developed, educational wise, developed, they've got well advanced systems. But all of those systems come to nothing if your heart does not like black people. And because of that, you use your systems to crush black people, of which black people, as I'm trying to open your eyes to see that they can actually be partnership for a shared future rather than seeing them as a foe, because there's no way that you can totally destroy the natives. The natives give birth like no other. As we're saving sex every weekend, we're giving birth, we're making babies. The population will never come down. It will always increase. And therefore, the poverty that is prevalent in South Africa and the rest of the region. And as we're gonna go to some global financial crisis, and it's gonna cause political upheaval, as we can see that shifting the blame to the black people or the black Zimbabweans, is not gonna last forever. At some point, black South Africans will begin to realize that no, it's actually the white monopoly capital. And when that day comes, China and Russia will use that frustration and black lives to actually uh, uh, you know go over the cliff and really use black people to fight against white people in South Africa through various ways, in such a way that it will be dire and create a situation whereby it's unlivable to be a white South African in South Africa. And who would you have to blame except for yourselves, white people, because you failed to invest in the prosperity of black South Africans? Instead, you invested in black politicians that are going to be stealing and destroying black people's lives and making sure that blacks are destroyed. And that is the reason why God is judging you. That's the reason why the Holy Spirit says, I must tell you that that's the reason why God is judging you. That's the reason why God is bringing the Russians and the Chinese against you, because the weak ones you have destroyed and they cannot stand against you. But God said, okay, to defend the weak ones, I will bring an army bigger than you, which is Russia and China. However, because even the weak ones are a sinful nation, these Russian and Chinese are not coming to bless them. They're coming to bless the Russian and the Chinese. They'll just get rid of the white people and they still come and oppress black South Africans. And they're already oppressing black Zimbabwe through ZANU-PF. You look at the policy of ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF has got no capacity to build a nation. So does the ANC. Once the white people are removed from South Africa, ANC will just have policies that are the same as ZANU-PF, completely extractive. Okay, extracting resources, and none of it is building. We speak about Jacob Zuma's 7 wasted years. It was all extractive, no capacity to build. Even though they had this bank, this black bank called VBS, it offered an opportunity, because banking is very critical in economic development. It offered an opportunity at least to see advancements in black lives through VBS. Instead, it was extractive process as well. They extracted the assets of VBS until it went to the ground. That's what I'm talking about. So as South Africa, the political class sponsored by the white billionaires know them very well that these are criminals, but they give them money, they promote them, they give them airtime so that they become big. Why? Because they do believe that, oh, so they are corrupt, they're going to destroy the whole country, and we'll just say black people cannot lead. We're hoping white people will take off. But it's not going to happen. There's no black people who will vote for whites. Let me tell you the truth. In as much as black people can be corrupt, the majority of black people will never vote for a white person to become the president in South Africa or even in Zimbabwe. Do you know why? Because of the oppressive nature of the white regimes, and even the continued oppressive nature of the white regimes today is the reason why. You see, if you look at the DA keeps on saying that they run better municipalities in the Western Cape. True, granted, they know they are actually they're better than ANC and they can build. But as I told you, the problem is the heart, not the skill, not the talent to govern. White people can govern, they can build, but they don't have their heart. Their heart is only for themselves. They will never build and govern for black success. So does the even in the Western Cape, the DA has terribly failed in uplifting the lives of the black people in Western Cape. Black people still live under squalid conditions. Even the pay rate is terrible. It's like we're living, I don't know what, it's like we're living in some like third world. Is I don't know whether to say third world country or what, like a terrible African country. The the pays that black South Africans are earning in a DA run or Western province really leaves a lot to be desired. It tells you that Steenhuisen has got no heart for blacks. He has got capacity, perfect, better than the ANC. So the DA is a well-oiled machine. Capacity can build South Africa, but only for white people. So the problem is their heart, not their skill. Therefore, if we change the mindset, the heart and the mind of how they approach these black people, and as I told you, white people should now think of black people as partners, not as enemies to crush, not as slaves to what to subdue, but to look at them as fellow citizens, and don't have this South African view only, but have this regional view of Southern Africa, and we begin to grow Southern Africa as a powerhouse. I do not think that these countries in Southern Africa should build their economies separately. We need to take our people out of poverty at the same time. We need to grow together with complementing policies of good governance, you know, systems across the region, respect for human rights across the region, respect for property rights across the region, and actually creating employment and economic opportunities for all regional players, not just a few. And that way, we will replicate that Chinese miracle from the 1970s and the 80s. And then Southern Africa will be powerful. And the white people in Southern Africa will be respected by the other whites around the world. And they will be actually part of the leaders in the new globe. We will have this polar, as the world is moving towards a multipolar system, we will not just have this America and then Russia pivot, but we also can begin to have a Southern Africa pivot. Because why? Because white people can be their senses. Right now, the weakness, the weak guy in Southern Africa is the white South African, the monopoly white capitalist. He has not come to full realization of what God was doing when he was planting him in Southern Africa. He did not know that God was intending in his mind. God was intending to bless you to become a powerhouse in Southern Africa. But that powerhouse, that blessing comes through you blessing other people that you find there, not destroying them. It's the same mistake that the American empire is doing. They believe that to sustain this global hegemony, you have to crush other countries. On the contrary, to actually become a superpower is to uplift other countries. That is the strategy that China is seemingly taken, even though I do not believe that China will be able to maintain that long term. But the Chinese also were clever to recognize that, crushing countries will not help you. Uplifting countries gives you that edge over them. That is why China now has built this hegemony over African countries, Latin American countries as well, because and South Asian countries, because they come with these uplifting policies, loaning to governments, so something that the United States does not do. The United States deliberately took an opposite policy direction, thinking that their hegemony can be protected by suppressing other nations. In their mindset, it was like, if we let these countries succeed, they will overtake us, United States, not recognizing that no, actually, as the countries succeed, they become more and more dependent on you because you're the one who's actually grooming them. And it's also flows back to you. Their growth flows back to you and you become stronger and stronger. So China recognized that. So America took this one route, China took the opposite route. Because of that, China is now going to be in a position to eclipse the American empire. And therefore, for America to actually counter China and Russia, Washington has to rethink as well their strategy. It seems like it's a white people's problem. The white people in South Africa and the white people in Washington are in the same WhatsApp group. They really need to begin to think, to change now their mindset and understand that to actually achieve dominance is actually to help the people that you want to dominate, not to crush them. Because if anyone comes and helps them and picks them up, that person is the new dominator. I wouldn't have minded if China was not a nation that oppresses religious rights. It oppresses human rights in such a way that I do not trust that if they achieve this global hegemony, I do not trust that we actually be living in a free world. I know that the Christians and the Muslims are persecuted in China. Christians are dying in China for being a Christians, just for holding a church service. You can die for that. So can we imagine if China becomes the leader of the whole world and is actually controlling all these countries? It will just pass a law that Christianity, they can just blame Christianity for something, and you will not be allowed to be Christians anymore. You have to be CCP. You need to, what to call it, Buddha. You hear what I'm saying? So things like that, lack of respect for human rights, and and they don't have a strong rule of law. the laws change anytime according to the dictates of the CCP leaders. Unlike in the United States, where even though Americans personally they can actually make mistakes, but the Constitution of America and the institutions of America are strong and robust. The financial markets of America are strong, deep, and liquid and trustworthy. And trust plays a pivotal role in allowing economies to leapfrog to greater heights. And therefore, I think the global um, economy is safe in a world that is led by Washington and not Beijing or Moscow. And therefore, it is critical for us in Southern Africa to be in supportive on keeping the US dollar hegemony and the leadership of Washington intact against these global forces like China and Russia that want to upset that global order, not because they're offering a better option, but because they want to drag the world down to a dark abyss so that they can promote their Russian and Chinese systems of oppression that are endemic in this communist and socialist republic that we have seen in the past 100 years or so. Therefore, this badly, it is important for us as Black Zimbabweans who are being attacked by these white South Africans as well, to come to a point that here to come to a point and realize that we're actually facing a same enemy. Right now, if these white South Africans, Black South Africans are fighting, the enemy will come and crush both of us. So it is important, just like in the Anglo-Boer War, the Anglo South Africans and the Boer South Africans fought a really harsh war until they realized that they're actually better together, stronger together. And after they came together, they became stronger and actually built South Africa to be the big power that it is. So I'd like to think that using that same mindset of ending the Anglo-Boer War and coming together to build South Africa, you need to come now to a position where you have to end this white and black war so that we can build a stronger coalition that is now global in this respect. Because as you can see now, if we as white South Africans and black South Africans do not come together, the Russia and China is going to come and tear us apart, and we will be crying in the long run. So at the moment, I am beginning to see that we really need to take this. This is a global war. This is a global war that has to involve a lot of coalition partners from Washington itself down to our economic leaders in the region is like like the white monopoly capitalists, like the open hammers and stuff like that, and the miners and the leaders in industry, the leaders in politics, to begin to understand that politics is not just about politics, but it's about real life changes. If we really want to maintain peace and prosperity in South Africa, we really need to end this racial war now, not tomorrow, but not not tomorrow, but as in now, as in yesterday, and begin to revise our policies and begin to interrogate these politicians that are pro-Russian, pro pro-Chinese, and engage the Ramaphosas of this world, the ANC, interrogate them on why they're pro-Russian. Actually, we do know why, and interrogate the ZANU-PF of this world and begin to see if there's a place in history where we can put them there where they belong so that prosperity can prevail in our communities. Thank you.